This is the story of an African king. As a cub, he's oblivious to the harsh realities of the world beyond his pride. Protected by a warm and powerful family, living is easy. As he matures, he'll learn the hard way. There are brutal survival strategies to learn. He must weigh up for himself when to flee and when to stand his ground. The journey from a cub to a king is fraught with danger and hardship. But success brings rights to a kingdom and status within a pride. Very few make it to the top, but this is one male with a chance to become an African king. This lion's journey began under one of Africa's magnificent rock monoliths. His mother instinctively knew this huge boulder would make a safe nursery. The land was green when her litter was born, but the plains can transform quickly, the result of the ongoing duel between the sun and the rain. At just a few days old, the male cub's eyes were closed, blind not only in reality, but also to anything the future would bring. His mother was his world. She kept him and his sisters warm, protected, and fed. There was little to sustain the lioness high on the rock, so she was alert to every passing opportunity. The calls of the wild were new to the cubs, but their mother knew their meaning. Our cub was born lucky, having such a successful hunter as a mother. But he was also fortunate in other ways. His home was a vast natural mosaic, one that provided for all his needs. His pride's territory seemed to go on forever, a kingdom that teemed with prey that he would one day learn to bring down. In time, the lion cub, a would-be king, would come to know this land intimately. For now, he had to be content to stay on the huge rock under which he was born. This was a time of new life on the plains. The young cub would learn which creatures to hunt and which to avoid. Every day brought new discoveries. There were others of his kind out on the plains. Taking his mother's lead, the cub and his sisters descended to greet their king. But when a huge maned beast loomed in front of him, the bold cub's confidence wavered. He didn't know that this giant of a lion was his father. New cubs are generally greeted with enthusiasm. For all their protests, even adult males are exceptionally tolerant of youngsters. But to feed her cubs, the lioness had to nourish herself. Our young male wasn't old enough to follow. He could only watch and wait. Time passed quickly. This male made his way through a privileged cubhood. His pride was strong and safeguarded him from the upheavals and fear that befell weaker families. However, he'd yet to learn the way of the bush and the animals that lived in it. The way of the lion is to hunt by night. Small cubs were not safe wandering in the dark. Their lot is to stay behind under the watchful eye of a babysitting adult. But there was more than just the moon out that evening. Leopards are also night hunters. Alerted by the commotion, a lioness calls for reinforcements. However, the leopardess hoists her kill beyond the reach of thieves. The real advantage this evening would be strength in numbers. The leopard's elevated position gives her a sense of security. But hungry lions can be unexpectedly determined. This time, the leopard's lucky. Lions aren't designed to climb trees. As dawn broke, the lion's world appeared as one of beauty and serenity. This was not to last. Another cat, this time Cheetah, caught the cub's mother's interest. Although this slender predator held no threat to the pride, lion eyes were watching her every step. The cheetah had cubs to feed, and she wasn't the only one. The lioness had waited for the perfect moment to make her move. After all, why hunt when you can steal from others? The cub's father had the same idea, but this food had not been claimed for him and was defended with vigor. Now old enough to eat meat, the young cub waited for his mother's summons. An older cousin arrived first, but the lioness made it plain that these stolen goods were exclusively for her offspring. There was enough to go round, but this season of plenty was coming to an end. The herds that had been a constant in the Pride lands were suddenly on the move, while the Lion Pride were doing what they did for over 3/4 of a day. For the king-to-be, this was to be the last moment of quiet rest. The seasons were about to bring about great change, and not for the better. Wildebeest and zebra were marching off in search of sweeter grasses. It was as if the earth had simply swallowed them up. The lionesses now kept an almost constant vigil for potential prey. A group of stragglers. A last chance for a meal before the dry season claimed the hunting grounds. Failure now would hit the whole pride hard. As the dry season took hold, hunger forced the lionesses to hunt animals not normally considered worth the effort. A rabbit represented a mere mouthful. The pride male knew a snatched morsel wasn't worth fighting for, but the youngsters were desperate. The situation was critical for the pride. Then it got worse. A new threat loomed on the horizon. The young male watched, uncomprehending, not realizing that this was the last he would ever see of his father. A male lion's reign over a pride lasts only as long as he can overpower all challengers. The approaching bachelor males have numbers, youth, and intent on their side. This was a situation from which the old king could either walk away or risk death by fighting. There were invaders in the pride's territory, and with the defending male gone, there was no one to challenge them. others were intent on finding lionesses. A desperate hyena mother dared not cross their path. The trespassers would let nothing get in their way. Their distant roar echoing across the land made the pride lionesses nervous. The females seemed to want to put as much distance as possible between them and the pride. Weeks of near starvation now showed. Hunger had the young male in its thrall. After weeks of nomadic roaming, the pride could run no further. As the young male scratched a persistent itch, one of the females was in for a shock. While the pride rested in the sun, others marched on with purpose. The young male didn't understand those reverberating statements of intent, but the voices were familiar. It was the same two males. Although the pride was open to invasion, the lionesses hadn't given up yet. As the young male watched with some confusion, the invaders stopped their calls to listen. But there was no pride male left to challenge them. One female summoned all the youngsters and headed for the wilderness. But for the other females, running away was futile. The young male was reluctant to leave his mother's side. takeover, it's not unusual for a mother to lead her dependent offspring as far away as she can. It's often their only chance of survival. Invading males don't hesitate to kill young cubs. Inexperienced and unsure of events yet to unfold, the young male could only watch and wait. The lionesses warned the invaders to keep their distance, but they kept coming. The new males had too much at stake to back down. They were prepared to risk their lives. The lionesses had to keep the invaders at bay to allow time for their young ones to get clear. The atmosphere was heavy with the threat of violence. The young male could only stand and watch as his confused pride is dispersed and divided. The young male was staying in the background, trying to escape notice. But the victorious males had fought hard for their prize, and were not going to share it. None of the lionesses could help. The young male's only hope of escape was to go where his pursuer could not follow. Instinct told him that the chasing lion offered only a violent death. Desperation forced him into the mire. Knowing the mud would swallow a heavier animal, the chasing male simply waited for his victim to drown, or to come within reach of tooth and claw. And then salvation, in blood-colored clothing. Maasai warriors are traditional lion hunters. After centuries of persecution, their quarry is scarred with deep-rooted fear of confident tall men dressed in striking red. The young male was fortunate, but he was going to need more than luck just to reach adulthood, let alone to become an African king. Power can't be earned in the wild. It must be taken, and at the right time. From his family, the male lion was totally alone. He was bewildered. He was frightened. Fled beyond the familiar and was stranded deep in a land of strangers. As the seasons passed, he discovered there were many realms beyond his own. There was much to learn. Without the experience or the weight to bring down prey alone, the young lion was forced to scavenge, often from scavengers. Ominous threats from dominant territorial males kept the would-be king almost constantly on the run. But he wasn't the only solitary youngster out on the plains. Banishment from their natural pride is the eventual fate of all male lions. Those that survive and are lucky will find an ally, another equally lonely young male, just as desperate for company. Partnerships formed between young males during their lonely years in the wilderness usually last for life. Lions are social cats. Only in the company of their own kind have they any chance of success. tarantulas gained in size and strength as the years marked their ascent to maturity. The young male was now a member of a strong coalition. His chances of winning a fight, bringing down prey and reaching maturity had significantly increased. Male lions reach their peak between 5 and 6 years old. It's at this stage that they must find a pride to take over. It was time to find clues, to step forward and claim a kingdom. Scent in the grass revealed that the pride in this territory had several females, but only one male to protect them. The old king knew he was outnumbered. History was repeating itself. He dared not confront the challenges. His only choice was to run. A lioness with small cubs knew she must lead them far away. The incoming male's first task was to chase the old monarch out of the Pride lands. The other young lion was left to face the lionesses alone. He was completely outnumbered, but he wouldn't stray far despite the threat from anxious females. If an ousted male turns on his pursuer, a fight is unavoidable. The old king sustained a deep wound in his paw. The contest was over, but the takeover was far from complete. Lionesses, especially those with young cubs, can be extremely hostile. The arrival of new males meant a period of insecurity and pride upheaval. It's not surprising that females can be vicious in their attacks. Lionesses usually stay for life in their mother's pride. They're all closely related, and new blood is needed periodically to avoid inbreeding. Incoming males play a disruptive but essential role in lion society. The would-be king walks carefully into the lion's den. It takes time for the females to accept strangers in their midst, but within days, an uneasy truce is established. After a few weeks, the lionesses will start to mate, but they'll only conceive after several months when they are sure the new males are here to stay. The pride has a new king. Years of wandering are over. What had been hostile and unfamiliar territory is suddenly his to defend. In his kingdom, the herds are returning, ushering in a period of prosperity for the pride. Doesn't end after a successful takeover. He must remain in power for at least 2 years. But this was one lion whose reign would last forever. Only a very select few successfully raise cubs of their own. The male must remain protector of the pride until his offspring reach independence. The larger the pride, the greater the measure of a lion's success. The journey from cub to king is a grueling and demanding one. With enough good fortune, experience, and strength, the rewards are a burgeoning family and the opportunity to usher the next generation of males onto the path towards sovereignty. Long live the king.